Good morning and welcome to our fifth installation of Safety Saturdays. Today's session is on emergency preparedness for your pets. Happy to be with you today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Autumn Barbato. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator with the Dunellen Office of Emergency Management. We're joining you today from our Emergency Operations Center, our EOC here at Burrell Hall. With me in the room today is Deputy Director Homer Mosley, the Director of OEM, Deputy Director Bill Carlson, who you'll be hearing from in just a bit. Also in the room is Joe Cummins, a member of our CERT team. We're looking forward to sharing some really important information with you today. Information we think will be valuable to help you prepare for managing your pets effectively in an emergency situation. So before we get into it, I want to be able to do just a little bit of housekeeping. You may notice towards the bottom of your Zoom screen a taskbar that looks similar to this. You don't necessarily need to be preoccupied with all of the icons here, but do pay attention to the mute and camera buttons. You don't necessarily need to have your camera on for this session. It's Saturday morning, and that's okay. If you're home having breakfast still in your pajamas, we're fine with it. You also want to pay attention to the reactions feature, which may allow you to, raise your hand during our Q&A session, which will happen a little bit later. And we'd like to ask you to just remain muted throughout the presentation until we do get to Q&A. You don't necessarily need to raise your hand in order to participate. Simply unmute your line at that time, and we'll be happy to engage with you. We all do want to mention that we've loaded a number of items to our chat. So take a look at that. You might want to wait until towards the end of the presentation so that you're not distracted or preoccupied with that feature. But there are materials directly related to our topic today, as well as links that you can access that'll actually serve the same purpose that we're trying to accomplish today, which is basically to provide you with guidance to help you properly prepare to manage your fur babies in the event of an emergency or disaster. And we'll have some closing remarks towards the end, so please stick around for those. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce Director Mosley, who will have a few remarks and who will introduce our speaker for the day.
Good morning, community, and welcome to Safety Saturdays. As Autumn mentioned, I'm Homer Mosley and the Director and Coordinator of the Office of Emergency Management, abbreviated OEM. And I am both proud and honored to serve Dunellen in this capacity. I was appointed by Mayor Jason Slocum for a second 3-year term. I'm also a proud volunteer member of the Dunellen CERT, which stands for Community Emergency Response Team. The OEM works closely with our town's emergency services providers, the police, the fire department, the rescue squad, and the Department of Public Works, DPW. We're responding to emergencies and disasters. OEM is also fortunate to have a dedicated group of ordinary citizens to assist in our protective and response efforts by being trained and volunteer as CERT members. The Office of Emergency Management is not only responsible for coordinating resources and our town's response to emergencies and disasters, whether they be natural, man-made, or technological, but also to make our town more resilient by educating and providing the knowledge and tools so that the citizens can protect themselves. Safety Saturdays is just one activity to educate the public about available protection measures. Now, I would like to turn the presentation over to today's speaker, Bill Carlson. But before I do that, let me tell you a few things about Bill. Bill is a resident of South Plainfield. He's the president of the South Plainfield Amateur Radio Club. He's an electrical engineer by trade. He's a CERT member, and he was recruited as the deputy coordinator of Dunellen OEM and coordinator of Dunellen, New Jersey CERT. He's a New Jersey certified emergency manager, fulfilling a 16-week training requirement. He was also awarded the New Jersey Emergency Management Association Award. Bill is a volunteer, and he was recruited again from the ranks and files of our CERT volunteers. Bill?
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. We're going to talk today about pets in emergencies, and you'll be introduced a little bit as we speak to the way that we in emergency management tend to think about things. The only good emergency is the one that doesn't happen. And so our first phase, our first focus is stopping bad things from happening. We call in emergency management, we refer to this as the prevention phase of emergency management, stopping bad things from happening to our pets. And how can we do that? Many of the bad things that can happen to our pets happen when they are out of our control. So the first principle of keeping our pets safe is to keep them under our control. Keep them on a leash, keep them in our houses, or keep them in our yards. Another bad thing that can happen is illnesses and diseases. Many of the diseases that can affect our pets are easily prevented with vaccinations. So the next principle is keep your pets' vaccinations. Well, there's something.
Okay.
Keep their vaccinations up to date. So diseases that are easily prevented are much less difficult to cure. So the vaccinations are a very simple way to keep bad things from happening to your pet. The next point is see your veterinarian regularly. Veterinarians are trained and they have years of experience at seeing little things that could potentially become more serious in the future. You may not realize that something is happening to your pet, but your vet will see it and can stop it before it gets more serious. Now, the next phase that we want to talk about, the next phase of emergency management and the next phase of keeping your pets safe is making bad things less bad. We call this in emergency management mitigation. And here are some examples. We can't stop our pets from getting older. In fact, we try very hard to keep them with us as long as we can. So they get older. We can't stop that, but we can help to prevent them from getting overweight and out of shape by adjusting our diet and making sure that they get the necessary exercise. We can't stop it from getting hot in the summer, but we can make sure that our pet always has shade and shelter and water when it is hot. We can't stop it from getting cold in the winter, although we'd like to, but we can make sure that our pets have a warm and safe place to keep them out of the effects of the cold. We can't eliminate insects. Again, something we might like to do, but we can't do it. But we can make sure that our pets remain free of ticks and other kinds of pests that can harm them, make them uncomfortable, make them ill even. So now we talked about prevention. We do our best to prevent. We work hard to mitigate the effects of bad things that come our way, but we also need to talk about being prepared for things that we cannot prevent and we may not fully be able to mitigate. And the things that we want to talk about today, it's not necessarily a comprehensive list, but we want to talk about illnesses or injuries. We want to talk about conditions that may force us to remain in our home with our pet. And we're going to talk about conditions that would force us to leave our home, in emergencies that would cause us to leave our home. Okay. How can you get ready for an illness or an injury to your pet? First of all, have the name and address and telephone number of your pet's veterinarian handy at all times. It doesn't mean that you carry it around with you, but make sure that you know where it is. It's even a good idea to keep it next to a phone, or on your taped to your refrigerator, so that if something happens, you know exactly where to go, you know exactly who to call, you know exactly how to reach them. Remember that vets are human too. They can get ill, they can take a vacation, so it's a good idea to have a backup vet. And you can discuss that with your primary vet. If your primary vet has a large enough practice, then you can be sure that there will always be someone there. But if it's a smaller practice, then your vet will say, look, if you can't reach me, then call somebody else. Call this person. Okay, excuse me for 1 second. Also, have a first aid kit available for your pet. You can ask your vet about this. You can find them in good pet supply stores. Have a first aid kit. Learn how to use it. Keep it handy. And also, as with all emergency supplies, take a look at it every once in a while and check for certain items that have an expiration date. One tip for this is the same tip that I use, and is often recommended for changing the batteries in our smoke detectors. Whenever we change the clocks, when we spring forward in the spring and when we fall back in the fall, it's a reminder to check the batteries in your smoke detector, and it's also can be a reminder to look at your emergency kits and say, okay, we've got a few items that are no longer current, and we'll replace them. Another aspect that we don't always think about is we want to be prepared for an illness or an injury to us. Now, what does that have to do with pets? Well, you are the most important person in your pet's life. They depend on us for food, water, for their medications, for shelter, and for love. And so if you suddenly, for any reason, become unable to care for your pet, we want to make sure that someone else will step in our place. Have a backup plan. Arrange with friends, with neighbors, with family. You all know the people who love your pets, and you all know the people who don't love your pets. Identify those who love your pets and who would be willing to take care of them in an emergency, and make arrangements with them so that if something happens and you have to focus your attention somewhere else, you're ready to go. Okay, next step is to be prepared to be stuck at home. Now, why would you be stuck at home? The most common example that we think about is extreme weather. Extreme weather conditions can make travel dangerous or impossible. We can have flooding, we can have trees that are down, we can have wires that are down, icy or snow-covered roads, and all of a sudden you find that you can't get out, you can't go anywhere. and you're going to be in your home for a few days. What do we need to make sure that we have? We need to have enough food always for a few days of what we're going to call isolation. I'm isolated at home. I need to have enough food for myself, my family. I need to have enough food for my pet. We need to have water. We can't take it for granted in difficult weather conditions that that we're going to turn on the tap and the water's going to come out. So we want to have some water stocked up for emergencies. Again, not only for our pets, for ourselves. We want to have our medications and our pets' medications, make sure that we have at least a few days of those. And again, for not only for our pets, but for ourselves. Now, the sort of opposite of being stuck at home is being stuck out of your home, forced to leave your home for one reason or another. Again, the same kinds of things that could isolate us at home may also force us to leave our home. Extreme weather, loss of power or heat, loss of air conditioning. We could have fire damage in our home, or the loss of one of the systems that we need to keep us comfortable. We may occasionally have to leave our home. We want to be prepared to evacuate with our pets if it's at all possible. And again, some of the same things apply. We want to have food, we want to have medication, we want to have vaccinations and license records. We also now, in this case, and these are things we want to take with us. When you're away from your home with your pet, you should have always the license and vaccination records, a leash or a harness for your pet, and a carrier or crate for your pet. And just as a little aside, I'm speaking now of what I would call the most common pets, cats and dogs. Some of these things don't apply to your pet tarantula or your snake or your goldfish or something. So you're not going to put a leash on your snake, and you're probably not going to put one on your parrot. But many of these things will still apply. You want to have a carrier or crate for your pet, and you want to have an evacuation plan. Planning for an evacuation when someone has knocked on your door or when there's a foot of water outside your door, that's not the right time to be planning. Plan when the skies are blue, so you'll be ready when they're not. Now, we'll talk about a little bit about crates and carriers. This is an example of a crate. I tend to call it a cage, but it's the correct term is a crate. Crates are generally less expensive than carriers, and they can be folded down for easier storage. And I don't have a photograph of that, but it's kind of amazing how little space a folded up crate will occupy. So it's a good choice if you're pressed for space. However, if you have to go to a shelter and your pet is in the shelter with you, your pet is very likely to feel exposed in a crate. And often we end up having to put blankets over them. So it's a disadvantage of a crate. The other option is a carrier. Now you can see a carrier is a little bit more elaborate. It tends to be a little bit more expensive. It's not as compact when it doesn't really fold up. You can take it apart, but it still occupies more space than a crate. However, when your pet is inside that crate, that carrier rather, they're going to feel much more secure. They're going to feel like it's their space, and this will reduce stress on them. Okay, we also spoke about an evacuation plan. Where will I go? Now we're going to talk about this very briefly. It will probably be the subject of a future Safety Saturday or an in-person meeting somewhere. But in very basic terms, where will we go if we have to leave our home? Some general principles. A nearby destination is better than a long distance destination. If the emergency has affected only your house or your neighborhood, and you can go to somebody that's very close to you, that doesn't take very long to get to, that's going to be the ideal situation. However, when we speak again of, for example, extreme weather conditions, that may affect a larger area. The more widespread the emergency, the farther you're going to have to go, or you may have to go. Family and friends are better options than a hotel, for obvious reasons. People, somebody once said your family has to take you whether they like it or not. But family and friends are better than a hotel. You'll feel more at home. It'll be less stressful, and it's less expensive as well. Also consider that in a widespread emergencies, hotels tend to fill up very quickly. So if your plan can include family and friends, it's a better plan. A hotel is better than a shelter. You'll be more comfortable, you'll be more alone, you'll have more control over your environment. However, a shelter should be considered the last resort, but it is an option that has to be a part of your evacuation plan. Review and update your plan periodically because things change. The people that would be willing to take you and your dog today, maybe a year from now, they have a new child who's got an allergy, and you show up at their door and say, "Oh, sorry, we can't host your dog anymore because of an allergy." So review the plan, speak to those that you plan to go to, make sure they're still okay. You might have to make some replacements. And share your plan with your family and friends, not only with the people that you're going to go to, but your entire family, so that if you evacuate and people are wondering, gee, where is mom and dad? Where is my son, my daughter? Well, they have some idea of the places that you would be planning to go to in emergencies. So now we've talked about prevention and mitigation. We've talked about preparation, and now we're going to talk about response. The emergency is actually here. What am I going to do? After we've done everything we can, but now we have to respond. We're going to talk again about response to an illness or an injury, response to isolation, and response to evacuation. If my pet is injured, my first call is to my vet. I don't think that 911 deals with pet emergencies generally, even though we might be tempted to call them. Call the vet and do what they tell you to do. If they ask you to bring your pet, also bring the list of medications, a leash, and the carrier or crate. Your regular vet will have a list of the medications, probably. But if you go to a backup vet, or if there's a vet that's less familiar with your pet, the list of medications, if you don't need it, that's fine. But if you need it, it's a good thing to have. It's always good to have a leash so that you can keep your pet under control, and a crate or carrier. A little bit harder for you to carry, but your pet feels more secure in the carrier, and they're also protected. If you go to a vet and there's a bunch of other animals lying around, your pet is safe in its carrier. We prepared ourselves to respond in case we are injured. Again, now it's happened. Something has happened to you, or something has happened to someone in your family that requires you to change your normal routine and dedicate a lot more time to someone else. So you are temporarily unable to care for your pet. And the answer here is very simple. You made a backup plan, follow it. You've identified family, you've identified friends, you've identified neighbors, you've got the phone numbers, you've got all the information, follow the plan. Once you put your pet in good hands, then you can focus on responding to your own needs and the needs of your family. We talk about response to being isolated. We're stuck at home. Again, we've thought about it. We've prepared for it. Flooding or extreme weather has made it unsafe for us to leave home. And in spite of that, we still feel safe. And that's very important. If it's difficult to travel and you feel safe in your home, then you can stay there. And you'll stay there and you'll rely, because we've planned and we've looked ahead, rely on the emergency supplies of food, water, and medicine. And so we have what we need for a couple days. But it's important, and I'll reiterate it, if at any time you do not feel safe, isolated at home, that's the time to call 911. You thought you could ride it out, you thought you could deal without heat for a couple days, but it suddenly gets much colder and you feel that there's a danger to your health, call 911. The next is response to an evacuation in which we're forced to leave our home. And I use it that forced as maybe a little bit strong of a word here. The decision to evacuate is not an easy one. In emergencies, in bad conditions, we'd like to stay in a familiar environment. We don't want to leave our home and our possessions behind. But if we're looking around and we're seeing that it's getting dangerous, if it's clear that it's not safe for us, then we may make the decision on our own. Also, if conditions that we may not be aware of are becoming dangerous, someone may knock on our door and say, we are advising you to evacuate. We're advising you to leave your home. If you're advised to evacuate, do so if at all possible. The person who's knocking on your door very likely has access to much more information than we would have as individuals. They would be much more knowledgeable about things that are bad and getting worse. So if you can evacuate, if you're advised to, and you physically can, do it. Go to the family and friends if that's an option. Again, it sounds simplistic, but you made a plan. The plan is a comfort to you now because you pick it up and you say, we already know what we're going to do. And bear in mind that if you're advised to evacuate, one of the reasons is that the authorities are becoming concerned about the resources available. If you don't evacuate when you're advised to, conditions may become so bad that rescuers can't reach you, or there may be so many people needing help that we run out of first responders. This isn't meant to make you afraid. It's meant to keep us aware of the fact that there's a reason for being advised. Go to a family or friends, if that's an option. Go to a hotel, as we spoke about, or go to a shelter. And when you leave, take your pets with you if you can safely do so. This is important. It's not advisable to leave your pets behind if it can be avoided, and it's not even legal to leave them behind under certain circumstances. We'll talk a little bit about that. When you leave with your pet should be in its carrier or crate, and you should have with you some food, some medication, vaccination and license records, and a leash or harness. We don't usually put water on this list because it's heavy and bulky and more difficult to transport. And if you're going to some place that's safer than where you are, it's likely that there will be water available. If you got room and you got the water, you can. There's no reason why you can't take it. If you must leave without your pet, first and foremost, you need to immediately inform someone in authority that your pet is still in your house. If you fail to do that, you have abandoned your pet, which is not fair to your pet. It's not going to be good for your emotional state, and it's against the law. Immediately inform someone in authority that your pet is still in your house. That's when you get to a shelter, maybe, or when you get to your family or friends or your neighbor. Put your pet in its carrier or crate before you leave the house. Now, this may seem cruel, and if your pet could talk, it might tell you that it would much rather be free and it promises to be good and it won't make a mess or anything else. But it's not cruelty to put your pet in its carrier, because when someone comes to rescue your pet that you've had to leave behind, they will not have to look under every bed and in every closet. They will know exactly where your pet is. They won't have to worry about how to handle it, because all they have to do is pick up the handle and carry it. When you put your food and medication and license records, the leash, and everything that you would have taken with you, leave that next to your pet in its carrier, so that when the rescuers come in, everything they need, everything they want is right in front of them. And very important, leave your house unlocked. Now, our initial reaction to that is, wait a minute, right? Conditions are bad, it's terrible conditions, and I'm leaving my house and all my precious possessions and so forth. I'm not going to leave my house unlocked. But think about it for just a moment. When someone comes back because you've let somebody know, and there are teams of people dedicated to rescuing animals in emergency, what is that team going to do when they get to your house if it's locked? So leave it unlocked, leave your pet visible, so that when this team comes in, they can respond quickly. When you evacuate, you may go to family and friends, as we've talked about. You may go to a hotel, but you may go to a shelter. Our shelters, our congregate shelters, as we call them, will provide for co-location. Co-location means that your pet will be in the same facility as you are, but not in the same room. There will be a separate area for pets, and that's where they will be cared for, and there will be a separate area for people. When you're in the shelter, it will be your responsibility to care for your pet, to give them food, to give them water, to take them for a walk if walking is a part of their routine, and to keep their area clean. Service animals in shelters are handled a little bit differently. What is a service animal? Service animal is an animal specifically trained to provide a service or services for someone requiring special assistance. Service animals in New Jersey are limited to dogs, trained dogs, and miniature horses. You're not likely to be able to bring your miniature horse into a shelter. So we're talking here mainly about dogs trained as service animals. A service animal is not a pet with a harness purchased from Amazon saying service animal. So please don't try that. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to the other residents of the shelter. If you have a service animal, you will be able to be with it in a special area. If you have a pet, the pet will be in the pet area and you'll be able to take care of it. The service animal, as I already said, will be able to stay with you in an area that is separated from the general population. And why is that? Because in a shelter, you're going to have people who are terrified of dogs. You're going to have people that are allergic to dogs. You will be provided with an area where you can be with your service animal away from other people. So this is a lot of information. A lot of it is common sense, but it's good to review it. And I'm going to summarize. Keep your pet healthy, vaccinated, and licensed. A healthy pet will be more resilient in emergencies and other stressful situations. And an unlicensed or unvaccinated pet may not be allowed to enter a shelter, at which point your pet would be taken somewhere else, and that's not good for you, and it's not good for them. Purchase and have handy a good quality carrier or crate of the proper size for your pet. Take the carrier and pet with you if you have to leave your home, and you can. If you have no other choice but to leave home, put the pet in its carrier and leave it in a place that's clearly visible. Always have enough food and medication available to get through a few days of isolation or a few days in a shelter. Take them with you. If you evacuate with your pet, leave them near your pet in its carrier if you have to leave it behind. And keep your pet's records easily accessible. For you, if you're going to take them, and for a rescuer if you have to leave them behind. And again, as part of this summary, if you leave your home, take your pet if you can. If you can't, immediately let somebody know that your pet is in your home. Our office has a lot of pamphlets and information on this subject. So contact our office if you want more information. And we'll also be happy to come to speak to your group, to a family, to a church, to a scout troop, to any kind of a club. If you'd like someone from our office to come and speak on this subject or other subjects involving emergency management, we'll be happy to come.
Thank you, Coordinator Carlson. Definitely a great presentation with and great informative presentation. The level of detail is really important, and you covered some items that I think that most of us may not consider or may not have considered, as even if we've been planning to manage our pets in an emergency situation. They're just things that we may not have thought about. So thank you for covering that ground for us. And now this brings us to the pièce de résistance, the part of our session that you've probably all been waiting for. And it is the pop quiz portion of our session for today. Don't be afraid, don't panic. We simply have a couple of questions that we're going to ask. And these questions are really designed to help reinforce some of what's been communicated today, just to help you recall a couple of important points, more so than actually throttling you to recall the details of the entire presentation. So here's question 1. If evacuating with my pet, important items I should take with me include A, food, medication, vaccination and license records, B, a leash, C, a carrier or crate, or D, all of the above. And I think for those of you who might have been paying close attention, at minimum, you've noticed that carriers and crates have featured pretty prominently in this presentation, as well as items B and A. So the correct answer for question 1 would be D, all of the above. Moving on to question 2. True or false? If leaving without my pet, I should immediately inform someone that he or she is still at my home, in which case it would not be necessary for my pet to be crated or housed in a carrying case? Feel free to unmute if you'd like to answer this question directly, but if not, it is a trick question. You'll notice the hint there. All right, so we'll help. The first half of the answer is correct. The answer is false. And why is it false? It's because the first half of the answer is correct. Part two, the idea that it would not be necessary for your pet to be crated or housed in a carrying case is not accurate. As Deputy Carlson so eloquently pointed out on more than one occasion, it is important to keep your house, your pet crated or in a carrier, correct?
Yes,
Correct?
absolutely.
Okay. And the reason again for that?
Yeah, so when the rescuers arrive, and they will do their best to get to your house, they'll be able to walk in the front door and immediately see your pet, immediately see its food and the things that they need to take along. And your pet will be safer and quicker, and they won't have to run around your house looking for it.
Fantastic. Okay, moving on to question three rather. True or false? There's absolutely no difference in the way that pets and service animals are managed at an emergency shelter. And we'll give you a tiny hint. The answer is false. As we pointed out, the designation pet versus service animal is significant in a shelter scenario. We're hoping that at some point you may even decide this session is being recorded. So if you're interested in knowing more about why that is, or if you just like to revisit it and rehearse the reasons for that, Deputy Carlson pointed out that we are available. You can contact our office for getting more information about these items. And you can also take advantage of listening to the replay. Okay, so that wraps up our pop quiz portion of our session. We will open the floor up for Q&A. Are there any questions from those online? I'll take online first. Questions or comments? Oh, we may have something here. Hang on, let's just take a quick look. Oh, that's fantastic. We did have you participating. Thank you so much for posting your answers to the chat during our pop quiz session. Always great to have you get engaging and participating with us. All right, so not seeing any questions at the moment for Deputy Carlson. Perhaps one of us, anyone in the room, have a question for Coordinator Carlson? I have one question. And that comes when it comes to having our pets licensed or tagged. Those are pretty common practices. What about microchipping? Is there anything that we might be able to comment on with regards to that, and any thoughts around that and how that might even work in a shelter scenario?
Well, yeah, I think that first of all, the main purpose, I believe, of microchipping is to help you get your pet back to you in case they get out. I believe it's more common in cats than it is in dogs, but it's available to many species of animals. And you should speak to your vet about this. It does involve a little bit of I wouldn't call it a surgery, but it involves it's a procedure that only a vet can do. But if you put a collar around your dog and you put a tag that says return to such and such a place, the collar can come loose, the tag can come off. The chip is always with your pet, and so it's a good idea to have it.
Okay, and seeing actually one comment from our online audience we have someone mentioning that the Edison shelter is now chipping for free. And just this audience member is just reiterating how important it is to have that done. So we'll look into that. Thank you so much for sharing that comment. We're aware pretty
Yes.
much that Edison does this on a fairly routine basis or annually, so to speak. We'll be happy to share additional information with you about that as we collect it in-house ourselves. So thank you for pointing that out.
That's great information. Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I have a question for Deputy Carson. I heard that it's a good idea to take a photograph of your pet with you in terms of matching your pet with the owner. Is that a good idea?
Yes, yes. I've heard that's especially important in a shelter situation, so that someone else doesn't come up and say, "Oh, this is my dog, and I want to take her home or him home." That the people who are running the shelter can say, "Look, please show us some proof that you are the owner of this animal." It's a very good idea. And it's fairly easy to do these days. Almost everybody has a cell phone. So if you have a photo of your pet and you, ideally a pet and you together, then that helps in a shelter situation.
Thank you.
Right. You're welcome. It may also help if you report to the authorities that your pet is missing, and somebody, the first question they're going to ask is, what does it look like? And well, here's a photo.
Hey, excellent. All right, thank you so much for participating in our Q&A portion of today's session. We will have some closing remarks at this time, beginning with our coordinator, Bill Carlson.
Okay. So everybody has a role to play in the management of emergencies. Those of us who have gotten deeply involved in it here in the office, that's one thing, but this applies to everyone. And the general advice that we give to anybody who's willing to listen to us is keep on learning. Don't pass by any opportunity to learn about how to stay safe and how to respond in emergency situations. Keep on preparing. Always be thinking about your readiness to be stuck at home, to have to evacuate, to deal with an illness or an injury. Stay informed. Know what's going on around you, and especially in things like weather conditions. You can look out and it can be sunny, but we could be 10 minutes away from a blizzard. So stay informed of conditions and get involved. There are many opportunities in our Office of Emergency Management and with our community emergency response team to get involved, to make a contribution. And again, you come in at whatever with whatever skills you have. We'll be happy to work with you, and whatever level of time that you can commit. Keep learning. We will have these, we hope to have these safety Saturdays every third Saturday, but there are other ways to learn. Ready.gov, FEMA.gov. There are webinars that are run by FEMA. We happen to be in FEMA Region 2, and there's probably a new webinar available, clearly more than one a week. Plenty of information. And they're free. There's no cost to attend these webinars. NOAA.gov is a good source for weather information, and our Office of Emergency Management and our CERT has a website and social media. And keep on preparing. Make your plans, keep them up to date, include your pets in your plans, have a go bag. It's always a good idea to have a bag with a couple days of clothing, a couple days of medication, some important records that you can either grab and stick in there or keep in there. You want to have a safety kit for your car. If it applies to you, you want to take advantage of Register Ready. And I think you speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick point about Register Ready. If you're not familiar with it, it is New Jersey's special needs registry for disasters. And the idea is to be able to serve persons with disabilities or access and functional needs. The idea is for those persons to register with the service, provide information that emergency responders can actually plan around in anticipation of an event. So we talked about mitigation as part of planning and preparing to manage in an emergency situation. This would be your way of helping yourself and first responders to respond to those unique situations where we have persons who have need special considerations for attention and response during an incident. So do take advantage of that. There is information about Register Ready in the chat session. There's a brochure that you can download. You can actually go to registerready.nj.gov to register there directly as well. So yeah, just another opportunity for our residents to help them prepare.
Yes, if I may add something to that, Autumn, thank you for that. If people have concerns in terms of privacy, that information is limited to first responders. It's not information that was be given out. Again, it's to assist first responders and giving those people with special needs priority in terms of evacuations, et cetera.
Good point, Director Mosley. The information is definitely secure and private and only shared among the responding first responder community as appropriate. Okay.
The last item here is pay attention to authorities. If you're asked to evacuate or advised to evacuate, take it seriously. It's almost always the case that the authorities are in possession of more information than the general public, and evacuation requests are not made lightly. Stay informed and stay alert. You can follow our OEM and CERT on Facebook. OEM is on Nextdoor for information and alert. Nextdoor is also a free app that you can put on your phone. Highly recommended to stay in touch with what's going on locally. We'll have on our YouTube, we'll have our Safety Saturday replays and other videos available. And please register with the borough for e-Notify. E-Notify will send you emails and/or text messages when something is going on in the borough that is important for you to know. And if you're so inclined, get involved. Our community emergency response team is a group of volunteers. First of all, trained to help themselves, their families, their neighbors, and their community in times of emergencies. Our role is not to be first responders. Our role is to aid first responders and law enforcement in times of emergency after, of course, we've cared for ourselves and our families. We also assist with non-emergency projects and activities. We get involved in the Memorial Day Parade, the graduation, and you may have seen us around town in our distinctive green uniforms.
Bill, if I may add to that,
Yep.
CERT training is for everyone. You don't have to become a CERT member to take CERT training. And there's a wealth of information in terms of how to protect you, your family, and your loved ones, and your neighbors. So I really ask you to consider taking the free CERT training. At the end of that CERT training, you're awarded a certificate. And again, you'll be more prepared to help friends, neighbor, and yourselves.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you, Coordinator Mosley, Director Mosley, for participating in our session today. I'm Autumn Barbado. Again, I'm the Community Engagement Liaison with the Office of Emergency Management, CERT. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about today's sessions or regarding any of our Safety Saturdays sessions and or content. I do want to point out that we want to hear from you. This is a two-way kind of conversation that we like to be able to have with our residents. You'll be able to provide feedback directly to us. But you can also take advantage of the survey that we have online currently to provide your suggestions, to give us feedback about these sessions, maybe even make recommendations for either times that might be better suited for your schedules, or about topics that you'd like us to cover. So we're looking forward to engaging with you further. And just to wrap up, letting you know that you can always reach out to Director Mosley and Coordinator Carlson directly via the information on your screen today. So if there's nothing else, we'll close our session for today. Thank you so much. Be safe out there.
Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.